"Sir, you can't park that here." The young salesman's voice cuts through the hum of the dealership. All glass walls, polished floors, and the faint echo of soft jazz meant to sound expensive. Outside, rainwater drips from the faded roof of a blue 1972 Ford pickup that doesn't belong anywhere near the chrome and LED reflections of the showroom. The old man behind the wheel doesn't seem to notice the stairs. He sits still for a moment, both hands on the steering wheel, as if listening to the engine whisper something only he can hear. You can feel the tension the second he opens the door. The sound, a rusty creak, drawn out and unapologetic, slices through the music like sandpaper on silk. Heads turn. One customer snickers behind a manicured hand. Another mutters, "Who drives that thing in this neighborhood?" The old man steps out slowly, wearing a clean but worn jacket, the kind that's been patched more than once. He wipes a drop of rain off the truck's hood with a soft rag he pulls from his pocket. Careful, reverent. The truck gleams under the fluorescent lights despite the rust along its edges. There's something about the way he touches it, like he's greeting an old friend instead of a machine. "Sir, this lot's for test drives only," the salesman repeats, walking toward him with the kind of smile that's all teeth, no kindness. "You might want to park around the back. Service entrance." The old man looks up, eyes clear and calm. "I'm not here for service," he says, his voice gravelly but steady. "I'm here to buy." A short laugh escapes the salesman before he can stop it. Around them, the showroom noise shifts. Phones pause, conversations dim, curiosity thickens the air. "Buy?" The young man looks at the truck again, then back at him. "We don't really do trade-ins on classics." "Didn't say anything about trading it," the old man replies. He pulls a folded envelope from his jacket pocket and taps it lightly against his palm. "I've got cash. That catches a few eyes." Even the receptionist leans forward, curiosity piqued, but the salesman recovers quickly. "Of course, sir. Let me just—" He gestures vaguely toward the office. "What kind of model were you interested in?" The old man glances around the room. Shiny SUVs, black sedans, electric trucks lined like soldiers. Then his gaze returns to his own weathered pickup parked just outside the glass. "Just wanted to see how far they've come," he says softly. The salesman doesn't quite know what to do with that. "You mean compare?" "Something like that." Behind them, two younger employees exchange looks. One whispers, "Probably wants to take selfies with the new models." The other smirks. "That truck looks older than my dad." The old man hears them but says nothing. Instead, he looks up at the large metallic letters bolted on the wall. Vance Motors, since 1974. His lips twitch into something between a smile and a sigh. He walks past the salesman and runs his hand along a gleaming red pickup near the entrance, the latest model. The paint reflects his lined face like a mirror. "Pretty thing," he murmurs. Though she's gained some weight over the years, the salesman chuckles politely. "Ha, yeah, new safety standards. You said you wanted to buy. May I ask your budget?" The old man looks back at him, eyes unreadable. "Budget?" He tilts his head, amused. "Son, I built my own trucks before your daddy learned to drive." There's a pause, just long enough for a few more heads to turn. One of the mechanics, wiping his hands on a rag near the service bay, glances up sharply at that sentence. His brow furrows. The old man continues walking, slow but deliberate. Each step echoes faintly in the marble-floored room. His shoes squeak, the sound small but defiant. There's a kind of dignity in his pace, unhurried, like someone who has nothing to prove and nowhere better to be. "You sure you're in the right place, sir?" the salesman asks, lowering his voice as if embarrassed to be overheard. "This isn't a museum." The old man's reply is quiet, but it cuts clean. "Maybe it should be." The salesman blinks. "Excuse me?" "Some of these models," the old man says, nodding toward the line of trucks, "they've still got the same bones, same curve in the chassis, same soul." His fingers trace the air as if sketching something invisible. Funny thing about progress, it likes to forget who built the first road. There's that silence again, the kind that stretches until it's uncomfortable. The mechanic still watching seems frozen now, eyes darting between the truck outside and the man speaking. The salesman forces another laugh, brittle this time. "Well, sir, if you'll just give me a name, I can check what kind of vehicle you're—" The old man interrupts. "You can call me Henry." He slides the folded envelope onto the nearest counter. It makes a small, deliberate sound against the glass. The manager, a well-dressed woman in her 40s, looks up from her desk, curiosity sharpening. Henry doesn't explain what's inside the envelope. He just pats the top of it once, like closing a story he's not ready to tell. Then, without another word, he turns back toward the truck and runs his hand over the driver's door. That's when someone in the corner, one of the older employees, suddenly stops mid-step. His gaze locks on the door's faded logo. The paint is chipped, but you can still read it. Vance and Henry Automotive, handcrafted since 1969. The man whispers, almost to himself, "It can't be." But Henry just smiles faintly, as if he's heard it all before. He climbs back into the truck, the door creaking in protest. The engine turns over once, twice, and then roars to life with a sound too alive for its age. Heads swivel toward the noise. Outside, the rain has stopped. The puddles shimmer under the dealership's white lights. For a long moment, no one moves. The salesman just stands there, his mouth half open, as the old blue truck idles like it owns the place. And through the glass, Henry looks back one last time, eyes calm, almost amused, before cutting the engine. He's not done here. Not yet. The hum of conversation seeps back into the dealership like air returning after a held breath. The laughter resumes, quieter now, but sharper, meaner. You can feel it in the way eyes follow Henry as he steps back through the glass doors, rainwater drying on his jacket. "He doesn't belong here, at least not to them. Back again?" the salesman asks, his smile stretched thin. "Listen, sir, we've got some—" Henry raises a hand, slow but firm. "I didn't get to finish looking," he says. The salesman glances toward his manager's office, hoping for a rescue. She waves him off, curious. "A scene like this always makes for free entertainment. Take your time," she says, not looking up from her computer. So Henry walks deeper into the showroom, his boots squeaking faintly. He stops beside a row of trucks gleaming under spotlights. Chrome mirrors, factory perfection, names printed bold across their grills. Vance Titan, Vance Pioneer, Vance Heritage. Heritage, Henry repeats quietly. That's a good one. No one catches the edge in his voice. A young couple nearby whispers, "That's the guy with the rust bucket?" "Yeah, he said he wants to buy something." "Sure he does." Their laughter is the thin, polite kind that hides behind hands and glances. Henry doesn't flinch. He leans closer to the red pickup and studies the craftsmanship. His fingertips hover just over the curve of the fender, respectful, almost affectionate. "You keep touching it like that, we'll have to charge for detailing," the salesman jokes. It's meant to sound playful, but it lands like a jab. Henry's smile never fades. "You treat all your customers this way?" "Only the ones who make my job interesting," the young man fires back, earning a snicker from the other employees. Henry chuckles low, the kind of sound that makes you wonder who's really laughing at whom. Interesting's one word for it. He moves toward the office counter again, eyes tracing every framed photograph on the wall. Founder portraits, awards, old newspaper clippings about Vance Motors' rise from a family-run shop to a national brand. Behind him, the salesman calls out, "You sure you can afford something like this? These trucks start around 90 grand. Henry turns slightly. "Son, that truck outside cost me my back, my hands, and 30 years of daylight." "I'd say I've already paid." The laughter dies instantly. The salesman's smirk falters, unsure how to respond. Somewhere near the service bay, that older mechanic still hasn't looked away from the truck through the glass. His jaw set tight, his expression unreadable. Henry continues, calm as ever. "But tell me something. You folks still make your own chassis, or do you just bolt what the computers tell you?" The salesman blinks. "Excuse me?" I asked. Henry says, leaning lightly on the counter, "If you still build them by hand." The manager finally looks up now, curiosity sharpening. "We haven't done manual assembly in 20 years, she says. "Why?" Henry shrugs. "Just wondering how much of the soul's left when the hands stop touching it." Her lips twitch. Not quite a smile. "That's poetic. But customers care about horsepower, not souls." Henry murmurs. That's what the factory said before they burned my name off the blueprints. The words hang in the air. The salesman frowns, half thinking he misheard. Sorry, what blueprints? Henry doesn't answer. Instead, he looks toward the mechanic again, then back at the salesman. Where's your oldest employee? Fella by the name of Gus, he still here? The salesman looks surprised. Gus? He turns toward the service bay. Yeah, he's still around. Why? Henry just smiles faintly. Just want to say hello. He takes a step back, eyes landing once more on the polished trucks gleaming under the lights. Funny, he mutters, how a thing you built with love can forget your fingerprints. The salesman rolls his eyes. You built this? Sir, these are Vance models. Patented designs. Patented, Henry repeats softly, as though tasting the word. Yeah. I remember the day they started caring about patents. Behind him, the couple has gone quiet. The mechanic has started walking, slow, uncertain, from the service bay toward the front of the showroom. You can feel the tension gathering again, invisible but heavy. The salesman notices the movement. Hey, Gus, this guy says he's looking for you. The mechanic stops in his tracks. He's older, maybe late 60s, face lined with grease and years. His eyes flick to the truck outside, then to Henry. Something unreadable flashes across his expression. Disbelief, maybe fear. Henry raises his hand in greeting. Been a long time, Gus. The salesman looks from one to the other. Wait, you two know each other? Gus doesn't answer. His rag drops from his hand, hitting the floor with a soft thud. He stares at the truck through the glass, his mouth slightly open. Where'd you get that? Gus asks quietly, his voice cracking. Henry's smile fades to something gentler. Didn't get it, Gus. Kept it. Now every whisper stops. Even the manager stands. The rain outside has stopped completely, leaving a strange stillness in the air. What's going on? The salesman mutters, half to himself. Henry reaches into his jacket and pulls out a small brass key, old, dull with time. He sets it on the counter with a soft click. This opens the first workshop we ever had, he says. Before they called it Vance Motors, the mechanic looks like he's seen a ghost. The salesman stammers. I don't understand. Who are you? Henry meets his eyes. Just a man who came to see what became of his brother's dream. The mechanic's hands tremble slightly. The manager steps forward, trying to control the room. Okay, sir. Maybe we should talk privately. But Henry's already walking toward the truck again. He opens the driver's door, revealing the faded interior and a single photograph taped to the dashboard. Two young men, grinning beside the same blue truck half a century ago. He doesn't say another word. Gus swallows hard. That's you, he whispers. Henry nods once. And the other one? Gus's voice breaks. Mr. Vance. For the first time, the salesman goes completely silent. Henry looks back over his shoulder, voice quiet but steady. He used to say the road was long, but fair. I'm just here to see if that's still true. The manager's heels click sharply on the tile as she follows Henry toward the door. Mr. Henry, was it? Let's maybe step into my office. We can talk about whatever confusion this is. But Henry doesn't stop. He opens the driver's door halfway and leans against it, the soft groan of its hinges breaking the uneasy silence. No confusion, he says simply. I just came to see Gus. Gus looks like he's been holding his breath for minutes. You're supposed to be gone, he mutters. They said you left town after the accident. Henry's gaze softens. I did. Didn't say I stopped watching. The salesman lets out a nervous laugh, trying to pull the atmosphere back to something normal. Okay, look, let's not make a scene. Sir, if you'd like to buy a vehicle, we can find something that fits your... Fits my what? Henry asks quietly. My wallet? My story? He tilts his head. You think this is about buying a truck? The question hangs there. Nobody answers. Gus takes a slow step forward. You kept it, Henry, all these years? Henry nods once, touching the chipped logo again. She's the only one that didn't forget me. That line lands heavier than anything else said all afternoon. Even the manager pauses, her posture straightening as the words echo. The salesman clears his throat. Mr. Henry, if there's some kind of claim or... There was a claim, Henry says evenly, his tone suddenly precise, deliberate. It was settled before most of you were born. The manager folds her arms. If you're implying this company owes you something, Henry turns fully toward her. His expression doesn't change, but the air seems to. I'm not implying anything, he says. But since you brought it up, he pulls the envelope from his jacket again and sets it on the hood of the red pickup. This, he says, is the paperwork that says I helped design the first Vance chassis. My brother took the plans to Detroit, said he'd be back by spring. His voice drops a notch. Spring never came. They told me the factory accident took him. The rest, they just took. The manager glances at Gus. Is any of this true? Gus rubs the back of his neck, guilt painted across his face. Back then, everyone just assumed the company started with Charles Vance alone. I didn't ask questions, the salesman's voice cracks. You're saying you're family? Henry shrugs. Depends on the day. He looks back at the old truck, tracing the air with his finger as if remembering each weld. This old girl was supposed to be our prototype. Lightweight frame, custom torque ratios, handmade suspension. You know what they called it? Gus whispers the name like a prayer. The Dreamline. Henry smiles faintly. That's right. The manager opens the envelope hesitantly. Inside are yellowed documents, sketches, measurements, a few black and white photos. One shows two young men in coveralls, leaning over a workbench littered with gears and coffee mugs. The resemblance is unmistakable. I don't understand, she murmurs. Why come back now? Henry's answer is simple. Because I heard you put my name on a truck again. He nods toward the massive banner hanging from the ceiling.
Introducing the all-new Vance Heritage, built on the Dreamline legacy. The irony doesn't need words.
It fills the room like thunder. The salesman glances up at the banner, color draining from his face. That's marketing, just use the name. We didn't know. Henry's lips twitch. Ignorance is always convenient. There's a low, awkward chuckle from someone near the back. Henry hears it and turns his head slightly. You think this is funny, son? The laughter dies on impact. He steps closer to the truck, his hand resting lightly on the hood as if steadying himself. This machine carried more than weight, he says softly. It carried people through storms, through winters, through wars, coming home. My brother said we weren't building engines. We were building trust. For a moment, no one speaks. The rain outside starts again, tapping against the glass like slow applause. Then the manager straightens. Mr. Henry, if your brother was the founder, and if these documents are legitimate, we can have our legal department. Henry raises a hand. Don't insult me with lawyers. His tone is still calm but firmer now, something like steel under velvet. I didn't come for money. I came for truth. Gus looks down, voice trembling. Truth don't pay the bills, Henry. Henry turns to him with a sad smile. No, Gus, but it's all you get to keep when the bills stop coming. The room is quiet enough to hear the rain pick up speed. The salesman shifts uncomfortably, glancing at the door. Look, sir, maybe you should leave. Henry finishes for him. Not yet. There's one more thing I'd like to see. He gestures toward the back of the showroom where a roped-off exhibit stands. The original Vance prototype. Spotless, displayed under a glass barrier. A plaque reads, The First Dreamline, 1969, built by Charles Vance. Henry's jaw tightens. He walks toward it, each step echoing louder than the last. The salesman follows a few paces behind, uncertain whether to stop him. When Henry reaches the rope, he stops. Funny how they keep her cleaner now than when she ran, he murmurs. He leans closer, eyes scanning every inch. Then he points at a small engraving near the door handle. A barely visible mark, worn but still legible, two initials intertwined. HV he turns to the manager. Tell me, Miss Vance, what do those letters stand for? Her eyes flick to the plaque, then back to him. Charles Henry Vance, she says cautiously. Henry's smile is almost kind. Close, Henry and Charles Vance. 2 hands, 1 dream. She blinks. You're saying, I'm saying you've been polishing my fingerprints for 50 years. The silence that follows is so thick, it feels physical. Gus closes his eyes, whispering, Lord have mercy. Henry straightens up slowly. Now, if you don't mind, he says, I'll wait right here. I expect you'll want to verify the papers. He returns to the counter, every gaze in the showroom following him. The salesman can't seem to decide whether to apologize or call security, but Henry just sits in the customer lounge, folding his hands over his hat, looking as calm as if he were back on his porch at sunset. The dealership's air has changed. Where laughter once filled the floor, now there's a strange, reverent hush, the kind that falls in church right before a confession. Gus stands near the display, his grease-stained hands trembling slightly as he stares at the old man seated by the customer lounge. He looks smaller now, not weaker, just human. The others glance at him, waiting for the old mechanic to speak, but Gus doesn't move. Finally, Henry looks up. "You still got that coffee machine by the back door?" The question cuts through the tension like a small mercy. Gus gives a soft laugh, half disbelief, half ache. "You remember that old thing?" "Hard to forget," Henry says, standing up. "It's where I burned my tongue the day Charles brought in his first blueprint. Said we'd build something that'd outlast both of us." The room listens, not out of politeness now, but because something real is happening. Something that doesn't fit in sales quotas or glossy brochures. Henry walks toward the back, every step deliberate. The staff and customers part like a tide, unsure if they're witnessing history or haunting. At the coffee machine, Gus joins him, keeping his eyes on the cracked linoleum. "Henry, I didn't know you were still around. They said you never made it out of the hospital after the explosion," Henry finishes softly. "Yeah, I made it out, barely." He sets a styrofoam cup beneath the machine, the slow drip of coffee the only sound. "When I came home, the shop was gone. The sign was gone. Even the folks who used to bring us lunch stopped looking me in the eye." Gus swallows. "Company called it progress." Henry nods slowly. Progress always needs someone to bury first. Across the floor, the manager and two executives huddle over the envelope. One of them, a younger man in a navy suit, flips through the brittle sketches and photographs with a frown that deepens each second. "This isn't just a family story," he whispers. "These documents are original." That's his handwriting. "The founders," the manager exhales sharply. "Get the legal department on the phone, now." But before the executive can move, Henry's voice carries across the showroom again, low, calm, cutting through the buzz of panic. "No need for lawyers," he says. "Just honesty." Everyone turns. The old man stands by the coffee machine, steam curling around his face like mist. "This company's been selling my brother's dream for half a century. I don't want your money. I just want my name to mean something again." The younger executive approaches cautiously. "Mr. Vance, if you're saying you co-founded—" "I'm not saying anything," Henry interrupts. "I'm showing you." He reaches into his jacket and pulls out an aged photo. The same two young men from earlier standing beside a truck frame in an open barn. This time, you can see the name painted on the wall behind them, Vance Brothers Auto Co. The lettering is rough, hand-brushed, imperfect, but unmistakable. Gus steps closer, voice trembling. "I was there that summer," he whispers. "I brought you iced tea while you were welding. You two never stopped arguing about whose name should go first." Henry smiles faintly. He won the argument. "I let him." The manager stares at the photo, realization dawning. "We've built our entire brand on a name that was only half the truth." Henry nods. "Then maybe it's time you tell the whole one." Silence. Then, footsteps from the front. A woman in a charcoal suit strides in, her expression a mix of curiosity and authority. She's mid-40s, sharp-eyed, with a company badge clipped neatly to her blazer. "What's going on here?" she asks. The manager straightens quickly. "Ms. Vance, this man claims—" The woman cuts her off with a raised hand. Her gaze settles on Henry. "Claims what?" Henry studies her for a moment, then gives a small nod. "You must be Margaret." Her brow furrows. "Do I know you?" "Not yet," he says softly. "But I knew your grandfather." A flicker of confusion, then something shifts in her eyes. "My grandfather?" Henry walks closer, the old truck's reflection rippling across his weathered face. "Charles Vance. He and I built that truck together. Before the company, before the fame, before your father ever took over." The woman freezes. Her composure cracks just enough for the room to feel it. "That's impossible." He hands her the photo. She looks down, sees her grandfather, younger, smiling, and beside him, a man who looks just like Henry, only without the years. Her voice falters. "That's you." Henry nods once. "And that's the truth." She stares at him, at the truck, at the documents now spread across the counter. Then she looks up, eyes glassy with the kind of recognition that carries both awe and shame. "My grandfather always said he owed someone everything," she whispers. "He never said who?" Henry gives a sad smile. "He tried to. You just didn't want to hear it." For a long moment, no one moves. The fluorescent lights hum. The rain against the glass slows to a soft whisper. Then Gus breaks the silence. "Guess the old truck found her way home after all." Henry looks at him, that faint spark of humor returning to his eyes. She's always been good with directions. Everyone exhales, but beneath the relief, something new has started. The truth isn't just out, it's alive, and with it comes the weight of what's been taken, and what must now be returned. The coffee machine sputters one last hiss before silence. The air in the dealership feels different now, like the walls themselves are listening. You stand a few steps behind, watching Henry's gaze drift toward the rain-streaked window. Something in his face softens, as if the years between then and now collapse into one long breath. And just like that, the present fades. The sound of hammer strikes and jazz radio fills the air. It's 1956. The Vance brothers' garage sits on the edge of a small Alabama town, the kind of place where dirt roads carry gossip faster than any phone line. Charles and Henry work side by side under the same leaky roof, one white, one black, both too young to know how rare their partnership truly is. "Pass me that wrench, Hank," Charles calls. Wiping sweat from his brow, Henry tosses it over, grinning. "One day you'll learn to say please." Charles laughs, a sound too carefree for the world they're building in. "When we're rich, I'll be polite." "You? Rich and polite? That'll be the day." Their laughter mingles with the rhythm of hammers, the hiss of welding sparks, the smell of oil and pine dust. Outside, a truck backfires and a few men from town glance in, muttering low about that boy working with a colored. Henry hears it, pretends not to. But later, when Charles hands him a Coke and says, "Don't mind them," Henry just nods, because he's learned that survival means smiling when you want to scream. Weeks turn into months. The prototype, their prototype, begins to take shape. It's boxy and rough but strong. Built for farmers, for builders, for anyone who can't afford fancy, but still deserves good work. Charles sketches the logo one night, candlelight flickering against the tin walls. "Vance Brothers Auto Company," he murmurs, writing both their names in bold pencil. Henry chuckles. "Your handwriting's so bad they'll think it says Vance Brown Co." "Then maybe we'll sell even more," Charles teases. For a moment, everything feels possible. Then the bankers come. 3 men in starched white shirts, and suspicion step out of a polished sedan one humid morning. Henry wipes his hands on a rag. Charles straightens his collar. One of the bankers squints at Henry. "You the help?" Charles opens his mouth, hesitates. "He's my partner." The banker's smile tightens like a noose. "That so?" An uncomfortable silence swells. Even the radio goes quiet. Charles stammers something about business, about needing a loan to expand. The men listen, nodding politely, pretending not to notice Henry standing there, until one of them finally says, "Well, we'll draw up the paperwork. Under your name, of course." Charles hesitates again. Henry feels the shift. Small, heavy, permanent. That night, they sit on overturned crates, the single light bulb swinging overhead. Henry finally speaks. "You gonna let them cut me out, Charles?" Charles stares at the dirt floor. "You know it's not about that. It's about getting the deal done. Once we're on our feet, I'll make it right." Henry exhales through his nose. "You sound just like them." Charles looks up, guilt flashing through his eyes. "Don't do that." "You know I'm trying to help both of us." Henry looks away. "Then write both our names." Charles says nothing. When the papers are signed the next week, only one name appears: Charles Vance. The truck goes into production 2 years later, after they've fallen out, after Charles has moved north with investors who never once looked Henry in the eye. Henry stays behind, works odd jobs, watches the billboards go up, Vance Motors, built on integrity. The first time he sees one, he laughs until he nearly cries. He still drives the original truck, their truck, until the night it catches fire in his barn. He dives in to save it, ignoring the heat, the smoke, the cracking timbers. When he wakes up in the hospital, half the town has already decided the story. That poor fool burned himself chasing someone else's dream. He never tells anyone the truth. The flashback fades. The dealership's lights flicker, humming back into focus. You see Henry standing there, quiet, holding a small wooden box he's pulled from his coat pocket. He sets it on the counter. "This was all I had left after the fire," he says softly. Margaret, the executive, the granddaughter, steps closer. She opens it. Inside lies a single metal emblem, a chrome V from the front of their first prototype, the same emblem that now shines on every truck they sell. Her throat tightens. "He took everything." Henry shakes his head gently. "He borrowed everything, then forgot to give it back." The crowd around them murmurs, not with ridicule now, but with the dawning awareness that they've been part of a lie too big to ignore. Gus wipes his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "All this time, we've been fixing his trucks without knowing whose hands built the first one." Henry smiles faintly. "You've been fixing mine." Margaret looks up, voice trembling. "Mr. Vance, I don't know how to make this right, but—" He interrupts softly. "Start by telling the truth." The lights dim as thunder rolls outside. You catch Margaret glancing toward the old truck again, its hood reflecting the dealership's glow, almost like a memory made solid. And as she turns back to Henry, there's something new in her expression. Not pity, not guilt, but resolve. Something's about to change. The dealership feels smaller now, like every square foot is holding its breath. The staff whisper near the service counter, phones half raised, but no one quite brave enough to record. Margaret stands motionless before Henry, the chrome V emblem still gleaming in her trembling hands. Then the door swings open. A tall man in a gray suit strides in. His expression polished and unamused, the kind of corporate calm that's meant to silence chaos. The brass nameplate on his briefcase reads, "David R. Caldwell, General Counsel, Vance Motors, Inc." He doesn't bother shaking hands. "What's all this about?" the manager stammers. "Sir, we may have a situation regarding brand ownership." "Brand ownership?" Caldwell repeats flatly, setting his briefcase on the counter. "We own everything in this building, including the conversation we're having right now." "Let's start there." His eyes land on Henry. "And you are." Henry doesn't flinch. "The part of the company you forgot to pay." A few muffled gasps. Margaret tries to interject. "David, wait." But the lawyer's already rolling up his sleeves, scanning the photos and papers like he's swatting flies. One of those claims. Nostalgic stories, handwritten notes, blurry photographs, all very emotional. "But if you've come here for money, Mr. Vance," Henry says quietly. The man pauses. "Cute." Margaret steps forward, her voice rising. "David, this isn't a scam. The handwriting matches the archives. He knew my grandfather personally. He is trying to manipulate you." Caldwell cuts in, voice sharp. "And if we entertain this circus for even a second, we're admitting liability." He turns to Henry. "So let's make it simple. Walk away now, and I'll forget this ever happened. Otherwise, I'll have to report you for harassment and defamation." Henry finishes. "You sure you want to use that word around truth?" Caldwell's jaw tightens. "I've had enough." He snatches the folder from the counter, but Margaret steps between them. Her hand presses against the leather, steady and deliberate. "Touch those papers again," she says softly, "and I'll make sure the board sees the footage from the last 20 minutes. Caldwell blinks. "Footage?" Her chin lifts. The dealership's security cameras have been recording since he walked in. So unless you want to explain to the board why you threatened a potential co-founder in front of witnesses, a hush ripples through the staff. Even Gus lets out a low whistle. Henry watches her, the faintest hint of pride in his tired eyes. Caldwell glares at Margaret, then exhales through his nose, forcing a brittle smile. "Fine, you want to play it by the book? Let's verify the claims. But once this falls apart, don't expect the board's sympathy." He grabs his briefcase and storms toward the office. Margaret turns back to Henry, visibly shaken but holding steady. I can't promise what they'll decide, she says, but I can promise they'll hear you. Henry nods once. That's all I ever wanted. The next day, word spreads faster than wildfire. Social media lights up with whispers of the missing Vance brother. News vans circle the dealership. Some reporters call it a hoax. Others call it history. Henry stays quiet. He sits on the curb outside, sipping weak coffee while the world debates his existence. Gus keeps him company, arms crossed. You sure you want to go through with this? Gus asks. Them corporate folks'll twist anything they can. Henry chuckles. Son, I've been twisted, bent, and broken already. Ain't much left they can take. Inside the dealership, Margaret stands before a long glass table. Executives line the room, eyes darting between her and the photos spread across the surface. Caldwell sits opposite, lips pursed like a man waiting to win a bet. This, Margaret begins, is Henry Vance, co-founder of Vance Motors, and the man whose designs helped shape our very first model. One of the older board members squints at the photographs. That can't be right. The archives list only Charles Vance. Because Charles removed his brother's name before filing incorporation, Margaret says. We've verified the handwriting and blueprint signatures, and they match both the founder's notes and government patent drafts. The room murmurs. Caldwell smirks. And you verified that through nostalgia? Margaret slides a new folder across the table. Through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, I requested a copy of the 1958 submission, and guess whose name was on the original line before it was crossed out? Caldwell's smirk falters. Margaret continues, her voice steady now. Henry Vance, crossed out in blue ink, initialed by Charles himself. For a beat, no one speaks. The hum of the air conditioner fills the silence. Then one of the older men clears his throat. My father worked with Charles. He used to talk about another man, said he was the real craftsman, the quiet one. I thought it was just a story. Margaret meets his gaze. It wasn't. Caldwell slams his pen down. Even if that's true, statute of limitations, Margaret cuts him off sharply. I don't care about the statute. I care about integrity. You know, the word printed on every truck we sell. The board murmurs again, louder this time. From the window, Gus and Henry watch through the glass. Two figures outside the empire that once erased one of them. Henry's voice is barely a whisper. You think she's got enough fight in her? Gus grins. Looks like she's got enough for both of you. The door opens. Margaret steps out, her eyes bright but unreadable. She kneels beside Henry. They want proof, she says softly. Real proof. Something beyond paper and signatures. Henry nods slowly. Then I'll give them what no one else can. He glances toward the old truck in the corner of the showroom, its rusted frame now surrounded by curious customers snapping photos. That engine still runs, he says, and it's about to tell them everything they need to know. Lightning flashes outside, white and brief. You feel it, the shift, the suspense tightening like a pulled cord. Whatever comes next, it won't just reveal truth. It'll prove it. And for the first time in 60 years, Henry Vance isn't just the forgotten name behind a company. He's the storm coming for it. The next morning dawns gray and trembling with thunder, like the world itself is bracing for a reckoning. The dealership lot, once just rows of shiny chrome and sales banners, now buzzes like a film set. News crews line the sidewalk, lenses fogged from the drizzle, as curious locals crowd behind yellow tape, and right in the middle of it all sits that old blue truck, mud-flecked, dented, stubbornly alive. Henry Vance stands beside it, one hand on the hood, the other holding a small leather pouch filled with tools so worn they look like relics. Gus hovers close by, soaked through but determined. Sure you want to do this here? Gus mutters. You could have done it quiet. In the shop, Henry shakes his head. No more quiet. He glances toward the glass windows of the dealership, where Margaret and the board members watch from inside, pressed against the reflection of their empire. Truth deserves an audience. The murmurs ripple through the crowd as Margaret steps outside, followed reluctantly by David Caldwell, the company lawyer. The cameras swing toward them. Caldwell adjusts his tie. Mr. Vance, I hope you understand this isn't an official proceeding. This demonstration won't... Henry raises a hand, stopping him with the calm authority of someone who's been underestimated one too many times. Son, I built this before you were born. I don't need official permission to show you what's real. A ripple of applause. Someone in the crowd shouts, "Let him talk!" Margaret glances nervously toward the reporters. "He has 10 minutes, she says quietly, mostly to herself. Henry nods once and lifts the hood. The hinges groan, a tired old sigh that somehow silences the murmurs. Inside, the engine gleams faintly beneath the rust. Every line of it, from the hand-shaped intake manifold to the signature valve cover, bears the unmistakable marks of a craftsman's touch. Henry points to the brass plate bolted to the engine block. Right there. Serial code V1001, that was the prototype, the first one we ever built. Caldwell crosses his arms. That proves nothing. Any collector could have faked a tag, except, Henry says, leaning down, we didn't use screws in those days. We riveted the tags, with my initials underneath. He takes a small wrench from the pouch, hands trembling but precise, and removes the plate. Behind it, faint but visible, are the etched letters HV. The crowd gasps. Cameras zoom in. Caldwell's smirk evaporates. You could have forged it? Henry finishes. Then maybe you should explain why those same initials are stamped under every engine in your museum collection. The air goes still. Gus lets out a low whistle. He just dropped the whole truth right on your showroom floor. Henry isn't done. He walks around to the passenger side and opens the door. The hinges squeal. Inside, the leather seat is cracked and faded. But one thing remains, the hand-carved dash panel. Initials burned into the grain, CV plus HV, 1956. You can almost hear the past breathing again. Margaret covers her mouth. My grandfather carved that, she whispers. He told my father it stood for Charles Vance, high value. Henry smiles softly. Guess he never mentioned who held the torch while he carved it? The crowd laughs, a sad, knowing laugh. Even the reporters lower their cameras for a beat. Caldwell turns pale. This is highly irregular. Without notarized? Margaret steps forward. Enough, David, she turns to the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't undo the past, but I can acknowledge it. This company was built on two brothers' hands, not one. The world deserves to know that. The crowd erupts in applause, some even wiping tears. Henry leans against the hood, his strength waning but his eyes alive. You don't owe me your sympathy, he says, voice trembling. Just tell the story right. That's all. A sudden crack of thunder punctuates his words. And for a split second, everyone freezes. The sky opens up. Rain pours, drenching them all, but no one moves. Margaret removes her blazer, steps closer, and drapes it gently over Henry's shoulders. Mr. Vance, she says softly, you're not just part of the story. You are the story. He laughs weakly. Took you 60 years to print the right name? She laughs too, through tears. Better late than never. Then, behind them, the dealership lights flicker, and suddenly, every digital display in the showroom flashes the same image, the company's logo, the familiar silver V. Only now, a message scrolls beneath it. Vance Brothers, built on both names, built on truth. The crowd gasps. Someone cheers. Margaret turns bewildered. Who did that? Gus grins, holding up his phone. Guess your IT guy didn't change the password from Vance 1956. Henry laughs so hard he starts coughing. Gus pats his back gently. Don't worry, Gus says with a wink. I'll tell him I hacked it for justice. The laughter breaks the tension, but as the cheers grow, you notice Henry step back slightly, his hand pressed to his chest. His breathing slows. Margaret catches him. Mr. Vance, he waves her off. Don't worry, child. Just tired. He looks around, at the rain-soaked crowd, the shining trucks, the sign above the dealership that finally tells the truth. You did good, he whispers. Then he straightens, looks toward the sky, and smiles. Charles always said he'd see me at the finish line. Guess this is it. The thunder rolls again, low and distant. Margaret stares at him, part disbelief, part awe. You're not going anywhere yet, but Henry just chuckles. Don't you worry. I've waited 60 years for this storm. I'll let it pass. The cameras catch it all. The old man, the truck, the emblem gleaming through the rain like something holy, and as the crowd chants his name for the first time, it isn't mockery, it's memory. The storm eases into a drizzle by afternoon, leaving the air heavy with that clean scent only rain can bring. The dealership lot has thinned, news vans gone, the crowd dispersed, but something about the place feels changed. Like the earth itself is breathing easier. Henry sits inside his truck, window cracked, letting the rain tap its rhythm against the glass. Gus leans on the open door, holding 2 cups of coffee from the gas station down the street. "You sure you don't want to head home, old man?" Gus says. "They'll tow this thing inside for you. Maybe even polish it up." Henry smiles, shaking his head. "She's been through dust storms and time itself. If I let her rest now, she'll think I gave up." Gus chuckles. "You're one stubborn legend, I'll give you that." Across the lot, Margaret stands with a cluster of engineers and PR reps, her hair still damp. She's different now. Not the polished executive who first dismissed him, but someone humbled by truth. When she spots Henry watching, she excuses herself and walks over. Holding a small box, "I wanted you to have this," she says quietly. Inside the box lies a gleaming brass key with an engraved tag. Vance Heritage Division. Founding craftsman, Henry Vance. Henry blinks hard, his voice soft. "You didn't have to—" "I did," she interrupts gently. "My grandfather erased your name. My father ignored it. But as long as I'm here, no one will forget it again." Henry looks up at her, not as an enemy, not even as a corporate heir, but as a bridge between past and present. "Keep your word," he says. "That's how you honor him on both of them." She nods. "I will." Then with a small smile, she adds, "Oh, and there's one more thing." She gestures toward the massive glass facade of the building. Workers are already climbing ladders, removing the old sign letter by letter. The new one waits beneath a tarp, and when it's pulled free, the sunlight catches the fresh chrome letters, Vance and Vance Motors. For the first time in 60 years, both names stand side by side. Henry's breath catches. He presses a trembling hand against the truck's steering wheel, tracing the grain of the wood as if grounding himself in the moment. "Charles," he whispers, voice barely audible, "we did it." "Brother." Margaret hears it and steps back respectfully, letting him have that moment. Gus wipes at his eyes, muttering something about dust in the air. A reporter lingers nearby, microphone lowered, whispering to her cameraman. "You think he'll give a final statement?" But Henry doesn't need to. The scene speaks for him. The battered old truck gleaming under the new sign. 2 generations of Vance legacy finally reconciled under a drizzle that feels like blessing. Later that week, the story floods national news. Forgotten co-founder finally recognized after 60 years. Photos of Henry beside the truck go viral, not as pity, but pride. Margaret announces a scholarship fund in his name, the Henry Vance Fellowship for Black Engineers. "Because some legacies," she says in the press conference, "deserve to build forever." At the dedication ceremony, Gus takes the podium, clutching a folded note. "Henry couldn't be here today," he says, voice thick. "Doctor told him to rest. But he wanted me to read something." He unfolds the note. Henry's handwriting shaky but sure. "Don't let them tell you time buries truth. It just waits until someone's brave enough to dig it up. I didn't build engines. I built second chances. If you ever find yourself mocked for what you drive, or where you start, remember, even an old truck can carry a legacy." Silence fills the room, the good kind, the kind that hums like respect. Then applause erupts. Outside, parked at the curb, the blue truck waits. Someone's polished it, the brass plate shining proudly beneath the hood. And for a fleeting moment, as sunlight breaks through the clouds, you could swear you see 2 silhouettes reflected in the windshield, 2 brothers side by side, smiling at what they built together. If this story reminded you that legacy doesn't fade, it just waits to be recognized, go ahead and smash that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss another story of truth, dignity, and poetic justice. Have you ever seen someone mocked for what they drive? Where or where they come from, only to later prove everyone wrong? Share it in the comments below. Your story might become our next tale of courage and redemption. And here's a little challenge for our most observant viewers. There's a small, easy-to-miss moment around minute 7:14 when Margaret reaches for the box on her desk. That's the first time she makes her decision to restore Henry's name, long before she admits it out loud. Watch again and tell us what tiny gesture gives her away. Only the sharpest eyes will catch what she does with her left hand right before the camera pans to the old truck. Because in this story, every legacy leaves a clue.